My addiction to pornography began at 10 years old in the 5th grade. Back then I was the basketball MVP at Knicks camp. I was one of the best players in the area. I had a lot of friends. Girls approached me because as a basketball player I was pretty well known, and so I was extremely popular. I was also one of the smartest kids in class, and overall my life was just improving every single day. But at that time I was also introduced to porn, and that's how the addiction started. I was actually disgusted at porn at first. However, I began looking at supermodels online. I began looking at magazines with girls in skimpy clothing. And naturally, as any boy would do, I began masturbating. And so, over time, and this was actually very quick, I realized that you wouldn't get the same high from the same girl or the same picture over and over. So that's when I started switching over to pornography. And that's what a lot of my friends also started using as well during that time. So moving on to the 6th grade, I was 11 years old. It was still about the same. I was still pretty popular, one of the better kids at basketball. So I was still very well known. But the thing is, over time, I began to grow more tolerant, and I began to need more and more of masturbation. So when I hit the 7th grade, and I was doing it very frequently, I actually almost went the complete opposite. It was the biggest downfall I've ever seen of a basketball player who was well known within the school go straight from that into what you would call, I wouldn't call myself geeky because I wasn't one of the kids who would play video games all day, but I began to be very antisocial, or I would just be very lonely and by myself. However, school was still very easy because at the time it was still middle school and I didn't have to apply myself, and I still got by with excellent grades. However, in the 8th grade, I actually had a resurgence. I was 13 years old. At that point, I still wasn't completely addicted. I wasn't doing it every day, but it was very frequent. And when I hit the 8th grade, it wasn't on purpose or anything. It was just that at the time, it was actually a stroke of luck. I had some lessons left over at this mixed martial arts place, an MMA gym, and my parents wanted me to go back. I didn't want to go at first. I was very shy, very unconfident in my abilities. And the thing is, my parents forced me to go, and that's something that I really thank them for doing. So when I went back, I just decided to give it my all. I was not unathletic. Like, I was a star basketball player for a while, so I was able to play. Over time, I actually grew to love it. The discipline, the life lessons that our teacher, our mentor, taught us. At the end of every session, every workout, he would give us a blueprint about consistency, about having confidence, about being disciplined, and that really led me to grow as a person. So I began training there every single day. There was no need to jack off, or PMO is what no-fappers call it. And since I trained every single day, probably 6 days a week, for a couple of months, like three months, in that time I worked so hard that in my weight class, at my age, I was top 3 in the Northeast at boxing, and also at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So from nothing, I worked my way up in 3 months, working out every single day for hours, and I became one of the best boxers in New York and in the entire East Coast. So at that time, 8th grade was a very good year. I also went back to basketball, and in basketball too, I began working hard, and I played on one of the better teams in the area. I wasn't the best player because they had been training for years and years and years, but for me, basketball was something that I loved to play, and I really just came back. I became one of the smartest kids in class. I was extremely vocal. The teachers liked me. I messed around with them a lot, but they liked me. And another thing that I did was I started running a business. I started running a small YouTube channel, and everything I did, I had work ethic for it. Although school was becoming harder, although I was doing a lot of things at once, I had a work ethic that allowed me to learn so much in the 8th grade. And with that business, I remember making my first $1,000, or actually make my first $100, make my first $1,000, make my first $5,000. and it was one of the greatest things I felt I achieved. So moving into the summer of 8th grade to 9th grade, that was also another very productive time. I went to this camp for what they call talented youth, and talented youth. So we went there, and at the time, I didn't realize it, but I think it was the effects of NoFap, and it was a 3-week camp. The first 2 weeks, I did not masturbate at all. I did not watch any pornography due to the fact that I shared a room with someone. And because of that, the change of environment, it allowed me to reap the benefits of what I'm planning on doing now again, or not planning on doing, but what I will do. So wording counts. But at the time, when I went outside and they had this time of the day after classes where you would socialize, and that was where I actually had my first girlfriend, first experiences, whatever. And I didn't realize it until now, that it was because I was harnessing my sexual energy, or maybe not because of that, but because I was more confident in myself, because there was no guilt from masturbating or watching pornography. Though moving into the 9th grade, I was still the best cross-country runner. I went into the freshman team without much training, and I actually was the best freshman on the entire team. I had ambitions of becoming a varsity runner, as well as playing basketball over the winter. But slowly moving into the 9th grade, I don't know why, or at the time I didn't know why, but my grades started dropping. I began to get C's in history. I dropped out of honors Spanish. I actually quit basketball, one of the best things that I could have done. I quit MMA, I quit cross country, but the one thing that really remained was my daily porn addiction. And that is what I really blame. And I'm not saying that porn for everyone is bad or masturbation for everyone is bad, but for me at least, the dopamine rush that I got from that replaced everything that I had going for me. My basketball, my boxing, my cross country, my schoolwork, and everything dropped because of that. My quality of life began declining. My reputation, because multiple schools came together for high school, it never really carried on because I stopped playing basketball. And slowly my social circle started dropping off as well. I had a business, but that was really established in the 8th grade when I had that huge ambition. The thing is, because I set up so well in the 8th grade, actually, I ended up making over 6 figures that year. And it's something that I'm extremely proud of, but it's something that I'm also scared of because it gave me this rush of success that I didn't really earn. It was more of in the 8th grade when I had my discipline, I earned, and then in the 9th grade when I was actually addicted, I reaped my benefits. And that's scary because I had money but no discipline. And I ended up spending a lot of that and being very dumb with it. So moving into the 10th grade, not much really changed. At the time, I actually developed a lot of fetishes, and that's the year that happened in 2016. That's 2016. So I developed a lot of fetishes. I started getting really into really weird segments of porn just to get off. Started noticing ED, porn-induced erectile dysfunction, and my quality of life dropped so much. I had another project that I was working on which literally could have made me a teenage millionaire. However, I dropped out on that because I would rather watch porn than work on that and develop the site. And that's something that I really, really regret. Because I was so stressed out and I was actually failing classes, I was the best student, I was the best athlete, the best businessman, or whatever you want to call it, entrepreneur, and I dropped to 4 hours of sleep. I had all these weird fetishes. I was failing class. I had extreme amounts of stress and depression. At times when I would see my report card, I would just start crying because, not just because of the grades, but because my quality of life was so bad. I became skinny fat, very socially anxious, and that led into this summer. This summer is where I really changed. I continued my PMO habits until an internship opportunity that I landed way out of town, way out of New York. I wanted to get away from home for a bit and to learn. So I was PMOing for a while, and then 1 week I decided to just go without it. And because of that, I experienced such huge amounts of energy. It was one of those first week benefits that a lot of people post on NoFap about. And because of that, I was able to start looking into NoFap. And through that, I'm led into a situation where now I was actually at 24 days going on strong, and I just relapsed. I relapsed twice without pornography. And that actually made me very proud that I could become excited without pornography. However, I am going for 90 days. I will do a complete reboot, as NoFap calls it. And in that time, I will be doing updates every single day and making sure that I'm accountable and that I can help other people out too. That's my story. I went from the most popular, most athletic kid down to the depressed, failing kid. And now I'm ready to make a difference, moving in to the 11th grade.